Hello again. Happy Friday and good afternoon. Welcome to this week's final version of PCA 3 at 3. We're very excited to have this week's guest on Friday, which is Jarrid Trudeau from Kristoff Cigars. I first met Jarrid at my first TA a couple of years ago, and I saw him when he walked into the foyer of the hotel that was there, actually right outside where the conference room was going to be. And I was like, man, who is this? Who is this baby faced kid, and what company does he work for? And lo and behold, it was Kristoff. He handed me a cigar, and I was very pleasantly surprised at how good that cigar was. And so we became fast friends, and I've gotten to know him quite a bit over the past couple of years. One thing I really appreciate from Jarrid is Jarrid's got an interesting background, which we're going to learn about, and would like to get his perspective based on that background outside of the cigar industry on kind of what he sees is going on inside the industry right now, and some potential kind of what he sees for the future going forward here in a little bit. So without further ado, here is our good friend Jarrid Trudeau from Kristoff Cigars. Jarrid, hello and welcome.
Hello. What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Great. I got to make the baby face joke just for the mere fact that I've been bald ever since, I was in my early 20s and bearded since I was like 16. So, I make that joke more in envy, the fact that you're going to, have sort of that Dick Clark timeless young look for the rest of your life.
It's my whole family has got the same exact thing. Everybody looks much younger than they are. And I'd rather it be this way than your way. For sure.
Fair enough. Absolutely fair enough. Yeah. On the flip side, not that I ever did anything wrong or illegal or nefarious when I was a kid, but I was 12 years old and never even got carded when going into R-rated movies, and 16 never got carded going into other places where you would have to be 21 just for the mere fact that, yeah. I have a very funny story of going to New York when I was a kid. I was, I think, 16 or 17, and I would go do Model United Nations. I was kind of one of those geeks, right? And we're in New York, and it was really interesting because going there, I had friends, and they were ordering different drinks and stuff. And because they were getting carded, they knew that they were underage. They were like, "Oh, hey, you have to get the virgin daiquiri or whatever the case may be." So it came my time, and I think I ordered the daiquiri. They brought me the one with actual alcohol in it, and everybody else was trying to sip off of mine. It was pretty funny. So, yeah, it's a little bit of
That never happened to me. That never happened to me.
It's beneficial then. It's caught up to me quite a bit now. Yeah, like a Mack truck. So anyway, how are you doing? How is self-isolation going down there? You just said it was 80 degrees down there, and you're in Dallas, correct?
Yeah. And in the last 10 years of being in the cigar business, it's like this is the least amount of time that I've ever been home. You know what I mean? Like or the most amount of time I've ever been home. I've never not traveled. I'm used to being on a plane twice a week and staying in hotels 200 days a year. And this is very unusual for me. And more unusual for my fiance, who has no idea what to do when I'm here at home. She's like, "Don't you have somewhere to go? Isn't it safe now, right?" And I'm like, "No, probably not." But we're figuring it out. We're figuring it out, trying to stay busy, trying to keep the sales team engaged, and doing a lot of these Zoom calls and interviews and all kinds of stuff. So we're trying to stay busy, and I just hope that we can carry over some of the good habits that we've developed being in quarantine afterwards, even a small amount of them.
So let me ask you about that. So for me, I think that my belief is people are starting to reach out via these mechanisms and are more prone and proactive in doing it because they really are missing that interaction. And so when we get back to a little bit more of the norm, I don't think people will miss out as much. And so I think that some of that desire will probably wane. But what do you, in terms of that, what are some of the things positives that you've seen that have kind of come up from this that you think that you're going to want to continue with your team?
Well, number one, it's very unusual in a sales organization or a sales-oriented industry like we have to have everybody at home. If one of my sales reps called me and were like, "Hey, can we take 2 hours on a Friday and just chat?" I would be like, "What are you talking about?" No. You go chat. You go chat to retailers. You don't chat with me. So it's been really cool to have everybody home and really work on filling some of the gaps in our infrastructure, like things that we should have done very early, like in the beginning and training and stuff like that, routing, good calling plans, things like that, where it gets passed over very quickly because you want to get the sales rep on the road and working, you know. So being able to sit down and do, let's say, a 3-month schedule, and not just do it for the sake of doing it in a cigar shop over the course of an hour while you're smoking and talking to people, but sit down and do it. And then that way, you know, okay, this is where I'm going to be for this quarter. So when a customer says, hey, let's do an event or something like that, you can say, I'm going to be back in your territory this date, this date, this date, this date, and have you run your schedule rather than having your schedule run you, right? And so it's worked out. It's worked out really well to that end. And also, you know, we took a different approach in handling a lot of our brick and mortar retail accounts during this dilemma. Like I've heard from a lot of retailers like that they've been getting a ton of emails saying, hey, you know, we're going to give you a deal to help you get through the quarantine. And it's like, that to me, that seems a little bit tone deaf, you know, because the retailer's making the decision in some cases, not in all cases, but they're making the decision between buying groceries or paying their rent or buying, you know, 10 boxes of cigars from Kristoff or something like that. And I don't want to put the retailers in a position where they think that that's helping them, whether it is or not. And I'm sure it is to a lot of people. But so we more took the approach of, look, our reps are going to call you. They've got nothing else to do. So they're going to call you. They're going to be talking to you. They're going to communicate. And if you need additional flexibility, if you need support for your curbside program, if you need a way to promo, if you want to get creative, if you want to, what we've been doing a lot is inviting engaged retailers to our Zoom sales training calls and having them give our sales reps a little bit of perspective on what their situation is, where their shop is, where their business is, what's going on, ideas for us for promos and events and things like that, but also allowing them who have, you know, whatever, 2,000 accounts between all of them. If you have a problem, if you have a business problem, if you want to know some creative things that some of our accounts have been doing, we share the information back to them, you know, and give them some ideas and tips and tricks and stuff that we've seen be successful so far during this weird kind of environment to do business. So we've been taking a much more information sharing, supportive, flexible approach to handling our customers rather than just inundating them with deals like many manufacturers do all year anyways. You know, so we figured it was, you know, I'm checking my email and freaking Sunglass Hut is texting me telling me how to handle a global pandemic, and it's like I don't think I need your perspective right now. I don't think, you know, but and I'm not. We do not have the ego to say like, look, we know how to handle this, because we don't know your business. So I think it's important to realize the manufacturer's place in this situation. Like the way that I always characterize the relationship between the manufacturer and the brick and mortar retailer is bacon and eggs, right? We're the chicken and they're the pig, right? Like we lay the eggs and we get to keep walking around, but they're the pig. They got to give something up in order to be able to continue to manage their business. So if you manage a relationship like that, you realize where the power dynamic is. You can really add a lot of value for your retailers right now when they need you to add value in the way that they need you to add value, rather than just slinging deals and tell them, hey, you know what would really help you if you bought cigars from me? You know, that just doesn't resonate with me. So we're really trying to do it. We're really trying to take a different approach and a novel approach to it. And it's been going really well, and the retailers have been really respectful and really appreciative of the approach that we're taking.
Excellent. Well, some good news is that from Alan Gold, as he just popped up here. Hello, Alan. It's great seeing you again. I get to see you pretty much every day now via social, so I love that. But starting May 1st, curbside will be allowed in Chicago. So that's something that's good. That's important.
Yeah, they just did it in Texas too.
Yeah, which is huge. I mean, it's got to start smart and small, right, in that regard. And then Paul Groh just mentioned, I was actually going to ask you about this at the virtual events, but he's saying you guys got a Metro Cigars virtual event coming up next week. What's that all about?
So it's pretty cool, actually. So the Metro Cigars customers in Brookfield and Germantown are going to be able to get Glenn and I recorded us discussing all the blends that Metro carries, some stories about where Kristoff came from, and stories of anecdotally like us working through blending the cigars and things like that. And so all the Metro customers, depending on which store that they're going to, And they very well may ship to whoever's listening. So I'm sure they'd be amenable to helping anybody out that's listening. But the customers place their order, they call the store, and then on April 30th, the customers show up and they'll have the order ready for them curbside. So they get great event deals, promos, swag, hats, shirts, whiskey glasses, stuff like that, and great deals on cigars. And as the weather starts to break, this is a good chance for those Metro customers and others to load up, and they're a great TAA store too. So they've got the new exclusives and things like that. The new Kristoff TAA exclusive. They sell the JT. So they've got all kinds of cool stuff. So it's a really cool virtual event concept where you actually, just like at an event where you'd be able to ask me or Glenn or whatever, what's the story with this cigar? What's the story with this cigar? We went over every single blend. So it's a really cool approach that they took to it. And like I said, I'm sure reach out Metro Cigars if you're in that Wisconsin, Milwaukee area, or I'm sure they'd be amenable to shipping and stuff like that too. So the event's next week.
Very cool. It's a really good idea. I'd love to see a bunch of those virtual things happen through our retailers. I would definitely love to jump on those. You mentioned a cigar I wanted to talk to you about, the JT Signature Series. JT obviously standing your initials of Jarrid Trudeau. You were gracious enough to give me a couple of those when I saw you at the trade show last year, and enjoyed them, and really enjoyed one. I went on, I think it was Cigar Dojo back in September, and had one. And so talk a little bit about that. The nod to the Red Sox notwithstanding, I did thoroughly enjoy the cigar. And I think you said it's just kind of your first Signature Series line, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, for me, anybody that talks to me for more than 5 minutes realizes that I'm a business oriented person. And so Glenn is definitely the guy. He's the one who does all the stuff around new product development, tobacco. He's the guy that spent all the time in the Dominican Republic working on all that stuff. So I've never and it's not for lack of opportunity, but I've never been one to get really, really involved on the blending and stuff side because, I don't know enough about it. And this is a product that we're commercializing and we have to be able to stand behind. And I know what I don't know. And I don't know a ton about that blending process and what Glenn goes through for that stuff. So he told me a couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, he was like, I want you to get involved. I want you to try to come up with a project or something like that. And so we actually, it was at a trade show, and the guy who runs our factory for us, Rolando Villamil, has been in the cigar business for 50 years or something like that. He brought this little, he literally had one 4-pack of cigars with the tobacco that he had access to. And he was like, here, smoke this. Tell me if you guys think you can use it for anything. And I loved it. And it was the HVA that we use in the JT Signature. So, which is Havana, Vuelta Abajo. So, or Arriba. There are 2 different regions. But it was awesome. And Glenn was like, well, if you like it, why don't you work on a project with it? And I was like, yeah, again, I was like, no, it's not my bag, and he was like, no, let's do it. And so, at the end of the day, he's the boss. So if he tells me to do it, I'm gonna do it. So I started working on it, and sort of my only caveats were, if I do it, it's gonna be what I want it to be. It's gonna be something that I want to smoke on a regular basis. My sort of idea of what I think a cigar should be, like, for my palate, right? It's not it definitely not for everybody's palate, but for my palate. And so I also said it's going to take me as long as it takes me. I'm not gonna half-ass it. I'm gonna do what I want to do with it. And he, to his credit, he was like, done. He was like, he gave me no schedule, no timing, no nothing. So I worked on it. It took me 2 years. That's how little I knew about the process. Glenn can go down and in a month or two work on something and come out with something that's excellent and is a huge commercial success. It took me 2 years. So working on blending and sourcing the tobacco and packaging and everything like that. And we finally arrived at it. So the way that we're doing it, like I said, Metro sells it. And there's maybe 20 or 25 retailers around the United States that have it right now. This obviously put a hold to it. But the way that we're doing it is the stores that do an event with me get the opportunity to continue to sell the JT Signature. And then it's exclusive to them as long as we're not doing events in other stores around them. So again, for them supporting me and supporting this project, they get the exclusivity, and their customers get to try something interesting. So I have one here. Where's my camera?
There we go.
So it's the Signature Series, and then I always tie my cigar wrappers in knots. And in a situation where you're trying to get the footband out, it becomes very challenging. So the footband is my initials, and it's in the blue and red of like Red Sox logo, like
right.
like,
Yeah. That's why I said not the Red Sox notwithstanding. I enjoyed the cigar.
Well, that's why we made it a footband, so you can take it off right away if you want. But so that's a nod to my roots and sort of where I come from, and it's also a cool way for me to further express myself in the cigar. So it's absolutely wild to see, something that's commercially available and has been as well received as this has, with my initials on it, because this is, again, a wheelhouse that I just don't live in, so it's been pretty cool. It's been pretty cool.
Yeah,
so
like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed
the footband.
The good old JT.
Yeah, in the Red Sox colors. So, yeah, so it's been a really cool project, and it's been really good to see the amount of support we've gotten from retailers. And the cigar, again, has been extremely well received, which is exciting for me, being my first kind of dip into the blending side of the business.
So I love what you said about, taking your time to make sure it's right, make sure that it's where you wanted it, the standard of excellence that you have for it. Understanding that you don't know everything about the process. I've heard quite a few people that I really respect in the industry that I think are really great masters at their craft in the industry have often said that, they paid their dues to get to the point to where they're at, that because this is a craft that you've got to hone it and you've got to, put in the time. And so that really is sort of what separates those that are really developing and creating these great cigars and great products versus some that are just, I'm going to throw out a cigar, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to put my name on it or something along those lines. And so I do appreciate the fact that it did take you 2 years, and I'm very glad to see the cigar, because you clearly worked hard on it, right? It clearly mattered to you. And I think that comes through in the cigar. Like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would never pretend to know how I would even begin to blend a cigar. I smoke them, and if I like them, I tend to smoke more of them. I'm not even that sophisticated to be able to do good reviews to talk about the notes or whatever the case may be, right? Sort of a simpleton in that regard, that I smoke what I like, and I enjoy everybody else's passion and dedication to be able to produce these products, because then I get to go enjoy them, and that's kind of what I like, the experimentation. So I'm really happy that it's turned out to be successful for you. I do want to touch upon something there that you talked about, that anybody that talks to you within the first 5 minutes tends to understand very quickly that you're pretty business minded. What were you doing before the cigar industry, before you got involved in the cigar industry?
So I was an executive for Target, and then I got headhunted and went over to Bed Bath & Beyond. So I spent when I had a real job, I spent my time as an executive for Fortune 500 retail, big box retail.
Gotcha. One of the things that we like talking about with all of our guests is really sort of a new perspective on what's going on within the industry right now. And obviously, as we've been doing these, and why we've been doing is because everyone is isolated right now. What all of this is doing to businesses. So I think it'd be really interesting to kind of get your take, both cigar perspective, but also, I'm guessing you had to deal with your share of crises at both Target and Bed Bath & Beyond. Nothing quite like what we're facing, of course. But no. From your perspective, are there any kind of lessons that you learned when you were in those corporate environments, the approach that they took, anything that they did wrong that you think could have been corrected, things they did right that might be beneficial or helpful for those of us to understand? I'd be really curious in terms of your perspective on that.
So for us, like, one thing that comes to mind is we had Hurricane Sandy on the East Coast that wiped out New York, New Jersey. It did a ton of damage up further north as well. And I remember there were tons of people that didn't have water, and they didn't have it was like an actual crisis where you needed water, right? Because you didn't have electricity, you didn't have running. A lot of places were flooded. Like, you actually needed that stuff. And so one of the things that we did was we thought about what our guests, when I was with Target, this happened. We talked about what our guests needed from us, You know, they didn't want to come into the store. They weren't in a browsing mood. You know what I mean? They weren't buying a
Right.
scarf. They weren't buying a scarf and stuff like that. They wanted water. They wanted food. So we took the product and we palletized it, which is not what we did. We were merchants, and put it on pallets and put it right by the register. So customers could come in, grab a case of water, grab their food, grab canned food, grab ramen, grab whatever they were grabbing, and then get out of the store quickly and back to their families and stuff like that. So we adapted in the sense that we tried to make the product available and consistent and good, and we tried to make sure that the customers had access to it in the way that they needed to. And we did sort of adapt that approach, like I was talking about a little bit earlier, with the way that we handled this situation as a Kristoff, is making the product available to customers, make it as quality and as consistent as we possibly can. We do this every day, but also being there for the customers in the way that they wanted us to be there. That was the first question that we asked ourselves when we were going through our planning for this crisis, was how can we be there for the customers in a way that isn't roundabout benefiting us, but is directly showing them that we support them in the way that they need to be supported. And that was the approach that we took, and that was what we did. And so we did adapt some of those lessons, but really for me, and for brick and mortar retailers that are getting creative and doing curbside and doing home deliveries and doing all these educational seminars with their customers and stuff like that, it's great to see them reacting to their customers, because the customers want that camaraderie. To your point, you were saying earlier, customers go to cigar lounges to be around other people going to cigar lounges and to get the level of service and the sales that they get from the brick and mortar retailers. And so to be able to find a roundabout way to provide that to the end users, and for us to provide that to our customers, is really, really encouraging to see. So I think a lot of people are adapting and reacting to this the way that they should be, within whatever parameters are provided for them. Some retailers don't have a choice, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and for those retailers, I mean, we've been working around the clock with retailers in certain areas to try to get restrictions lifted, try to get exemptions, try to get exceptions, try to get it classified as essential, even if it is. I mean, we've done things in Colorado. We're trying to get things done in Pennsylvania. We're trying to do things in different states that it is. And it's frustrating, because on one hand, you can have not very far away one locale that understands it and has the concessions, or understands the need for this business to be able to continue to operate in a very safe manner in these set forth in these parameters. And then on the flip side, maybe 100 miles away, it's very different for somebody else. And we've got people that have, like 13, 14 stores closed down, and yet, just a half a state away, somebody else is allowed to open and operate and have, one person at a time, or curbside or delivery, things like that. So it is unfortunate. And I'm just reading some of these comments coming through. One comment here is great. I think that this is great. Bed Bath & Beyond, when are we getting the 20% Kristoff coupons in the mail? I would also like to ask if the Beyond in Bed Bath & Beyond was somehow a secret humidor in the back of the store that you could go in and get cigars, and that's how you actually got in the cigar business.
Say that again. I'm so sorry. I was reading the comments too.
No. I was just asking, what about the coupons? It was just a funny question. I was just asking whether or not if the Beyond in Bed Bath & Beyond was somehow a secret humidor in the back of the store, and that's how you got into cigars in the first place.
No, but they were really mad. So that was the job that I left to come and sell cigars, and I was Kristoff's first employee, first in-house sales rep. Okay. And so Glenn and I had been friends. We had talked for years about maybe being in a position where someday we could work together and start to build a sales infrastructure and stuff like that. And then finally called me and said I could come. I said I could come work for him. And we didn't really know what was going to happen, but it just so happened I took over the New England territory as the first in-house rep. And the idea was to show him in-house sales worked, and then he was going to let me scale the organization and hire and train people around the country, right? So that was the plan. But initially, it was like I went from being an executive for a Fortune 500 retail company, regional guy, but regardless, to I took a huge pay cut to come and sell cigars. And so when I went into the vice president of Bed Bath & Beyond's office at Patriot Place in Foxborough, and I was like, "Hey, Danny was his name. I'm 100% sure he's not watching this, so I don't care if I talk crap about him." But I was like, hey, Danny, I'm leaving. And I want to say thank you for everything. And, but this is sort of what's going on. He was like, you're leaving for the day? I don't care. And I was like, no, I'm serious. I'm like, I'm leaving. He goes, what are you doing? He's like, are you going back to the Target? Are you going to Costco? I know they're hiring, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no. I said, I'm going to go sell cigars. And he was like, what are you talking about? Like, he just had no idea what I was talking about. And so I was like, no. I'm like, it's a small company, and they wanted to hire me, and they're going to give me a chance to build the company up and build a sales infrastructure. And it's a real opportunity, and it's something I'm passionate about. And he was like, you're going to be back in a month. And that was like maybe 7 years ago or something like that. And so when I was leaving, I had two other regional executives come up to me, and they were like, hey, you're going to work for a cigar company? I'm like, yeah. They're like, which one? And I'm like, I told them. They're like, oh, no way. Like, I love Kristoff, blah, blah, blah. They're like, oh, you got to keep us in touch. And then they've ended up coming to some of my events and stuff when I was a rep.
Oh, that's cool.
So it was cool. You never know who's into it and who's not into it. But then, so that was a while ago. It was really, and I have an opportunity to look back, So yeah. Glenn gave me a hell of an opportunity. And now we went from one employee to now we sell millions of cigars in 33 countries, and things are a lot different now than when I started, So we're blessed, man. It's cool.
Excellent. Yeah, that's good. So I do want to dive into this, and this has nothing to do with cigars, but I saw this a little earlier. Our good friend Skip Martin, the chef maestro down in Austin right now, does JT have a position on sous vide? It's his question.
Yeah. I have a position on sous vide.
But I want to talk about this because I went to culinary school, so I definitely want to talk about this.
If you aren't sous videing almost everything, you're simply wrong. not just, and everyone's going to be like, oh, you're boiling meat in a bag. That is just a fundamental lack of understanding of what's actually happening there. You can create, if I told you there was a magic button you could press that created exceptional proteins, chicken, fish, steak, absolutely everything, and you could press this magic button and it would be cooked perfectly every time, every single cook in America, every single person in America will buy that button. And sous vide is that button. You put it in, you hard sear it afterwards. It looks like it came right off the grill. You could even put it on the grill, and it is cooked edge to edge, medium rare, perfect, exactly what you want. So whoever, the great unwashed that wish to criticize me for using technology and science to make better meals for my family, I have no time for you whatsoever. I
believe Skip Martin.
You can spin
adamantly agreeing
sweating over your grill. You can spin out sweating over your grill. Well, the miracles of do you still rub two sticks together to start a fire?
Sometimes.
No, you don't do. No, yeah, but I couldn't do that.
I mean, if I'm on a TV show with Bear Grylls, absolutely. But other than that, no.
Not adapting technology for propriety's sake is silly and ridiculous. And I will I'm not even going to read these comments because I'm sure there's people that are like, no, there's nothing like my Traeger.
So far we're good. I have a Traeger and I do enjoy it, but the flip side of it is again, like I said, I was in culinary school, and this was 16 years ago, maybe. I don't know. I'm too old. But I at the time there was no affordable. You only had like the industrial size with the big water baths, and they were thousands of dollars, and so I couldn't afford that. So I made my own. Right, I got the vacuum seal, and I sealed up my own meals and whatever else and stuff. Got a candy thermometer, and I made sure I kept my temperature on the stove. I couldn't set it and forget it like you have with today's contraptions that they have. I had to sit there and monitor it, but because I wanted to seal in that flavor. And just as you said, working in a restaurant, what you do when you have the steaks, they don't sit there and cook the steak. They don't throw it cold onto the grill. They cook it. They will essentially have it in an oven where it's completely surrounded right in the air circulating, but they keep that and they keep it at a very low temperature. And what they do is they then sear it to get it to the point that you want it when they bring it out to you. And that's how they can, cook those steaks as well as they do on that shorter notice. And it's that sort of reverse cooking method. So, I agree. I love smoking on the Traeger. I love grilling on the Traeger. I do. I got to convince my wife to invest in sous vide because I think that she would enjoy it too because it's so easy and it's so flavorful.
Yeah, and it's crazy because you come out in support of something like sous vide in these trying times, and the amount of flack you get from the internet is just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. I
Oh, I
mean,
love the internet.
they criticize your manhood. They criticized everything. And it's like, do you still walk down to the creek to get buckets of water for your family and wash your laundry? No, then leave me alone. How do you even have the internet machine if you don't know how to pursue technology?
Alan
It's
Gold
silly.
has a very good comment here that I just want to put up here because this is very, very, very true. Mr. Carney, LFD, is in fact Bay, and I keep, telling him whenever I see him that when is the offer for me to be able to enjoy some of his delicious meals, and I still have yet to get the invite.
Yeah, it's in the mail.
Yeah,
It's in the mail. It's coming all the way from the North Woods in Maine. So,
and to my knowledge, I've never
could take
talked
a while.
Patriots trash or Celtics or Red Sox trash to him to the extent that I would be uninvited to something like that. So I'll just wait for Jonathan to come to his good senses and enjoy a meal with me. Mark, that's a good question. Is this about cigars or cooking? I happen to relate them both. And in fact, I do have an interesting story about that, Mark. As I said earlier, I went to culinary school. When I first met John Anderson and Greg Zimmerman of the then what was the IPCPR, and I went to his Civil Lounge, which has now closed, and it was they shared a restaurant. And with Brian Voltaggio, his range was the one that provided the food for the lounge. Who actually Brian is a phenomenal chef. So we sat there, and it was the first time. I mean, he and his brother were the finalists for that season of Top Chef, right? And he's got a lot of great restaurants. But it was the first time that I ever really sat down and had a meal while smoking a cigar, like intermittently, right? I'd never done that before. It was always a post-meal thing, always with the drink and everything else and stuff. And so for me, that was a great experience. And I've done it numerous times since. I love having a meal while I'm eating and being able to take cigars and that. And again, it helps a lot. But for me, eating a meal and enjoying a good meal like that, especially when you're taking the time to sous vide and sear it on the grill, really kind of, to me, is indicative of the same approach that, one might take when sitting down to enjoy a cigar while they're unwinding and everything. So that's kind of it. I do, Mark, I think you also did ask a question, though. Can circle back to Kristoff. You asked something about West Coast reps, and do you know the name of the West Coast rep that you have out there for Kristoff that Mark might be able to get in touch with?
Yeah, Alexander Harding.
Alexander Harding, there you go.
He started with us maybe 5 or 6 months ago, and he's got a big territory: Arizona, California, Colorado. He's got kind of a New Mexico, a big territory geographically. So I'm sure he's making his way through everything, and he's a great guy, really engaged on the PCA side and everything. So yeah, Alexander Harding. And if you want to message me afterwards, I can put you guys in touch too.
Cool, great. There's a cigar you guys came out with recently. I kind of wanted to get back to as well. They talk about. I love the name, just because it's the pissed off Kristoff. Talk about that a little bit for folks that may not know, but the pissed off, it's great. I love the branding aspect behind it because kind of what goes into it. But this is a cigar that might knock you on your butt a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, this is probably the strongest blend that we make in terms of like nicotine content and just the overall strength of the blend. So this is an idea that came from a cigar event in Alpharetta, Georgia, at Cutter's. And it was a multi-vendor event, and this guy ran up to Glenn and was like, I've wanted to meet you guys from Kristoff forever. I have the greatest name ever for a cigar. And then he told us it was Pissed Off Kristoff. And then we actually forgot about it. And we were in the Dominican Republic drinking at a restaurant really late at night. And Glenn, we were trying to come up with some projects to work on while we were down there. And Glenn was like, what was that name that guy had? And I was like, oh, it's the Pissed Off. And he was like, you want to try it? And I was like, yeah, why not? We'll try it. And we started trying it. We did it in 10 count boxes as an experiment. And now almost every size of that cigar is in our top 10 SKUs. So it's been really, really successful for us commercially.
That's great. What is the blend?
So it's a San Andres natural wrapper. It has an Indonesian broadleaf binder, and then it also has Nicaraguan Lajero in the filler component. So it is a powerful blend. And the natural style San Andres wrapper is something that many people probably haven't had the opportunity to smoke, because most of the time when you see San Andres, it's Maduro. And so we went with the natural style. Just I thought it was a little bit brighter, a little bit sharper, and it had some great power to it. So it ended up being, like I said, it's a really strong cigar. It's one of
Yeah.
those things which I smoke mild medium most of the time. I'm not a huge Maduro guy. I'll smoke anything. It's not like I get sick from it or something like that. It's like I smoke everything. I enjoy everything. But if I'm gonna pick something, usually it's a natural style wrapper, natural style tobacco. And so it's been that's too strong for me.
Yeah.
But it is really, really good though when I do get the chance to smoke. I'll eat a nice sous vide ribeye, some mashed potatoes or something like that, and then I'll smoke a pissed off, and it washes down pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. As Valley Bradshaw points out, it's a great after dinner cigar. Real quick, I want to ask this question though. Our good friend Shorty Cable says that he eats 7 Krispy Kreme chocolate glazed donuts a day. So I'm just going to ask you, what would you pair with 7 Krispy Kreme chocolate glazed donuts? What Kristoff cigar would go well with the chocolate glazed Krispy Kreme donut?
Oh man, I have no idea. I would say do a Maduro, do one of our Maduros. That chocolate that could play off of it pretty good. He should probably be drinking like a smoothie or something like that.
I think Shorty, he definitely capitalizes on the fact that he's very tall and therefore probably, needs a lot of additional calories in order to get through the day for the.
Yeah.
That right? Skip Martin, good point here. Natural San Andres is much stronger because the nicotine hasn't been attenuated in fermentation. So there we go.
Yeah, 100%. It's like espresso. When you see these really dark roast espressos, those usually have less caffeine because it's a more processed. It's a more processed product than a blonde roast espresso or something like that. So a lot of people have that misconception, and it's the same with tobacco. A lot of people have the misconception that if this tobacco is really dark, it's going to be really, really strong, and that's one of the biggest misconceptions ever. It's the way that I sort of characterize it is like, and again, it's a horrible food to reference here, but like onions, right? Like you put a slice of raw onion on a sandwich, it's going to be sharp and bitter, and the flavor is going to be in your face. But you caramelize those onions, and now all of a sudden it's sweeter and richer and deeper, and you still maintain some of that original character. So that's exactly, obviously. I don't know.
That's great. That's the first time I've heard it in that context of onions and caramelized onions. That's great. This is
you don't want to compare a leisure product to onions, but it's But that's the way that I characterize
it. Stays with the theme. We've been talking about food this whole time, so it works perfectly, actually.
Yeah.
So within the last little bit here, next 10, 15 minutes, want to get you. So we got a little bit about your background, business background, and getting into it. So let's get to know Jarrid outside of cigars a little bit better. The most obvious question is that hat on your head, and so talk a little bit about that. You're from Boston, big Boston, New England sports fan, yeah?
Yep. Born and raised on the East Coast in New England. Diehard homer for every single team, and everybody. I get so much shade for being a New England sports fan, being a Red Sox. Everybody thinks that I just you like until I talk, and then people hear the accent a little bit, and they're like, "Oh, okay, you probably didn't have a choice." But when I was coming up, none of these teams were any good.
No, that's right.
So the Patriots weren't good. The Red Sox hadn't won anything. The Bruins were obviously a storied franchise, but hadn't put a cup together in a very long time. The Celtics, storied franchise, but weren't doing particularly well. And so I came up in probably the best time in history to be a Boston sports fan. And so I remember one of my favorite stories. We went to my uncle Omer and we went to the training camp, the Patriots training camp at Bryant College in Rhode Island. And my favorite player was Bruce Armstrong, who was a defensive tackle. And your team sucks when a defensive tackle is your favorite player. And so
you just really love the sport to know the defensive tackles are an important part, right?
And so I told my uncle, I'm like, can you get me a signed football from Bruce Armstrong? That's all I want while we're at the Patriots training camp. So he's like, all right. So he left me with somebody else, my cousin or something. And we walked around the Patriots training camp. My uncle came back to me with this football signed by Bruce Armstrong. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I kept it in my room, displayed it, put it up on a shelf. And like fast forward like 10 years or something. And I'm talking to my uncle maybe at Christmas Eve or something. And I'm like, hey, I'm like, I still got that football that you got me at the Patriots training camp. And he goes, man, I signed that shit in the parking lot. I couldn't find him. And I carried it with me for like 10 years. And I'm like, oh man, do I throw it away now or what? But I never, so if anybody knows Bruce Armstrong, I would love to get an actual signed football because he's still my favorite player.
Well, there you go. See, well, your loyalty is still with Bruce, regardless of the football. That's good.
Yeah, the horrible prank that was played on a child. So,
well, my stepson, he's 19 now, but when he was playing Little League football, one of the coaches was he was Air Force guy who was stationed here at the Pentagon, and so the kids played together, and he was Boston, huge not Boston, but New England fan, and so we were talking, and I said, man, growing up, it had to suck for you being from that area with sports because you guys won nothing. The Patriots were a laughing stock. The Red Sox had the curse. And, again, like you said, the Celtics and Bruins. I said, but man, your kid, he's never not known the city of Boston to be a championship. I mean, you're trying to championships like crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing. And now everybody, the day that Tom Brady went to the Bucks and Gronk unretired and went to the Bucks, and I got so many horrible text messages from spiteful, mean people. But the fact of the matter is, I have been drinking the entire NFL's tears for the last decade, and I'm probably due for a little bit. So
turnabout's fair play. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. I think that in the great karmic world of sports, the Patriots are due for that. Absolutely. But I will say this: I do kind of find it funny that the Bruins started playing the best hockey of the season right when this all got shut down too.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, we were a hot team the entire season. Tons of momentum. The team was playing well. Everybody was clicking. And all of a sudden, and this Bruins team, unlike many previous years Bruins teams, they were able to get pucks on net, which is something that they've always struggled with. They always skate around. And so I'm very, very sad that the season got canceled. And I'm hoping to smoke some celebratory cigars. I was already getting my celebratory cup cigars squared away. And now now I'm worried. So we'll see.
You still would have had to get past the Caps, man. The Caps have the Bruins number. You got, I mean, it's been a while.
Every year, you people. Caps year.
Hey, we finally got one championship, so
we got one.
So it's but the Caps have been the foible for the Bruins for the past several seasons, right? And so but yeah, I mean, if not to get too far down into the Bruins rabbit hole, but Post is a lot of fun to watch. He's great.
It's amazing.
Rask has always been frustratingly fun to watch as well. I loathe Brad Marchand. I just loathe Brad Marchand.
But you know what? If he played for the Caps, you'd like him.
Well, that's why everybody hates Tom Wilson, and I love Tom Wilson, right?
Yeah.
However,
or PK Subban or
fair enough. But Tom Wilson has never licked another player's face, so at least he has that Marchand has done, right?
He's committed to his craft, man. He's committed to his craft. If you're gonna be bad, be good at it.
Exactly. So one of the things, so we talk about sous vide. So I'll ask this question. I've asked this from a few people that I really like getting people's perspective on this. So quarantine, you're obviously cooking everything else, but if you had to be quarantined, completely shut off from restaurants, everything else, and you could only have one type of meal, what would that meal be?
One particular meal?
You could go specific. You can go where you want. You can go specific with this, down to whatever, pecan crusted chicken breast or whatever, or you could just say for something along the lines of, pizza or something like that if you wanted to.
I am like anybody that knows me. I'm like a creature of habit. I have a routine. I stick to my routine. I wake up. I make an Americano and a smoothie. For lunch, I have chicken. I prepare a ton of chicken every week, and I have chicken in a tortilla, cold. And then for dinner, I make whatever I'm making for dinner. So probably, but pizza is probably my favorite thing. Although Texas is a pizza desert, they just don't know how to make pizza here. They really don't. And every time I say that, people are like, "Oh, you got to try this place. The people are from, Sicily or whatever," and it still sucks. I mean, it's just a pizza. It's just a pizza desert out here. I must have tried 50 places, and none of them are good. So I've got baking steel. I've got baking steel at home. I make my own pizza, and it's, reminiscent of what I came from on the East Coast. But as soon as I land, my sales rep Johnny Vegas, he picks me up from Logan Airport, and he's like, we're going to Santarpio's. We go to my favorite pizza spot. He picks me up. We go have lunch, and then we go about our day. So my East Coast rep is a dear friend, and he's solid with making sure I get my pizza fix when I'm out there.
Oh, excellent. We got a couple of places here. We're fortunate that like have that Neapolitan certification of the way they cook the pizzas. So I like hitting those places. My wife rolls her eyes that I'm a pizza snob because I like to go to those types of places. But, it's not, I'm not calling for delivery when I'm going to those places. I'm paying for a really good pie.
Yeah.
No, it's good stuff.
If you're going to eat pizza, you got to eat good pizza. Life's too short for bad pizza or bad cigars.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last question I do want to ask is, you've got a fantastic portfolio of products that are there. Just give me from your palate, your Jarrid Trudeau perspective of 2 or 3 cigars that you like and what you like to pair them with. And whether that's what are you drinking with them, what do you smoke them afterwards, of some type of meal that you've eaten or something along those lines. 2 or 3 of your kind of your go-to cigars with that you like to smoke with Kristoff, and under kind of what circumstances, pairings or otherwise, that you enjoy them the best.
I smoke. So for me, if I smoke, again, like I said, creature of habit, definitely a routine guy. I smoke the Connecticut in the morning. That I smoke the Connecticut all day. That's one of my favorite cigars that we manufacture. It's got a Nicaraguan binder, so it's got a little bit more going on than traditional Connecticut. I think the Ecuadorian Connecticut that we bought for it is absolutely exceptional. So I'm really, really pleased with that cigar. I have that with coffee in the morning. I love our Cameroon. For me, real African Cameroon is my favorite tobacco, period. There's a lot of, all Cameroon is just Indonesian Sumatra grown in Africa. And so it's climate oriented. So you see a lot of stuff passed off as Cameroon that isn't Cameroon. But we bought some really good African Cameroon, Mirafel Cameroon, really, really strong. It's got some great like nutty, toasty, creamy kind of element to it. So that's a great step up for me from the Connecticut. And then our Sumatra is exceptional. I think that's probably one of the best blends that we made, period, in 15 years of doing business. And that would probably be my end of the day smoke. And then I obviously smoked the JT all day. I blended it to be able to smoke it all day. So I really dig this. And then pairings, Connecticut obviously is a coffee thing for me. I usually smoke the Cameroon with something that's not going to overwhelm it. So I drink vodka like somebody bet me I couldn't. So I'll have
I guess ice water.
Yeah. I'll have a nice Tito's on the rocks with lime with the Cameroon, and then with the Sumatra, I'm a bourbon guy, so I'll go with any number of bourbons. But my go-to is Booker's. I drink a lot of Booker's. So that's what I pair with that Sumatra. Spicy from the tobacco, spicy with the bourbon. Drink's pretty hot. So that's what I'm into.
Outstanding. I love the fact that we've gotten a lot of good hockey comments that have come in from Go Hawks to Penguins comments and Go Preds. So that's good. That's gonna be, we have to do a hockey and cigars one of these, and we'll get, Casey Johnson on and some of these other guys. So
that would be awesome. That'd be
a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, smoke a cigar to toast off to whenever the season's supposedly coming back. Did you see, by the way, where Ovechkin and Gretzky were playing NHL on video games together?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's pretty good. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So
he's electric, man. Ovi's electric.
Yeah, it's one of those things to where I grew up out west, but the one team I never adopted when I moved here was the Redskins. I always had my first team that I really cheered for was the Seattle Seahawks. So I've kept that allegiance. But when I moved here, pretty much everything else I adopted. I'm not a big basketball fan, so not really with the Wizards. But so with the Capitals, my wife is an even bigger hockey fan than I am, and so it's been so fun. I feel so lucky to have had like somebody that's that kind of game changing in an era. And then on the flip side, with the Penguins fan here as well, to have that rivalry with somebody so close with somebody like Sidney Crosby, who are two kind of game changers within the NHL, has been a lot of fun to watch. It's been a lot of fun to hate Sidney Crosby, but also to watch him. It's kind of the same thing with some of these other guys that you love to hate because they're on the other team, but they're just so fun to watch when you take a step back to appreciate how ridiculously talented and skilled they are.
Yeah. Yeah, and my parents are huge fans, Boston sports fans. Obviously, spending their whole life there, they're huge fans. So they actually have these like maybe 2.5 foot tall garden gnomes, and each one is wearing like that different Boston
That's
sports teams gear. And when they lose, my mom gets up from the couch without saying a word and turns it around facing the corner. And that's like the punishment to the team. So you know which
That's
teams are still in the running and which teams aren't by who's facing outwards for the room. So
that,
yeah.
that's awesome. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time today. I will say this, Josh yesterday, when he was talking with Jorge Armenteros from Tobacconist University, was smoking a big poppy. So there's a good nod to the Boston sports icon
Oh
there.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully we can get him back to the trade show one of these years. I think he was supposed to be coming back this year, but unfortunately, I don't know what if he's coming or not, or kind of what's happening. So anyway, do you have any plans to do a nice, before we go, Jarrid is asking, who I believe looks like he spells his name the same as you. So look at that. I'm just going to pop this up so you can see it. Does Kristoff have any plans to do nice Corojo or dark Corojo blends?
So we make a Corojo Limitada. It was the number 11 cigar of the year in 2012 in Cigar Aficionados list. 93 rated, really well received. So we do make a Corojo Limitada. So next time, I know Jarrid, fathers expect more from a son named Jarrid. That's a smart name. And he is the only other Jarrid that I know that spells his name in the same stupid way that I spell mine. So he, great guy, works at Metro Cigars up there, that Paul and Jen's store.
Oh, great.
Great people. And next time Kevin Hatchie, who's our sales rep in that territory, comes into Metro, make sure we get Jarrid some Corojo to smoke. But dark Corojo, that's a good idea. I love the Antaño, the Hoya de Nicaragua, the Antaño dark Corojo. That cigar is a home run. So dark Corojo, I like that idea, Jarrid.
All right. Well, on that note, Jarrid says, oh, yes. So fantastic. All right. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Again, just as a reminder for all PCA members, an email will be going out. So look for that. But we have a members only exclusive webinar on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern time, where we've got a tax lawyer and an accountant that's going to be going through what you need to do to be compliant with PPP loans to ensure that you do not have to pay those back. And so even if you didn't get the PP loans on the first round, if you are in the queue, chances are likely that it's coming. Don't miss that members only webinar so that you make sure that you know all the steps you need to take once you get that money, because apparently you've got 8 weeks, if I remember correctly from what they said, to be able to spend that appropriately. And they'll go through all the various ways once you have. So we've got that all lined up. And then we've got a lineup next week as well. We have, again, a members-only roundtable townhouse with Representative Guy Reschenthaler, a U.S. representative from Pennsylvania, huge cigar supporter, and so he's great. And then after that, we have Phil Ledbetter from Up Down Cigars and Pete Johnson from Tatuaje that will be joining us as well. So stay tuned for that docket coming out next week. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Jarrid, thank you again for joining us. Love Kristoff Cigars, the support for the organization, the work you guys do. Be well, and please give my best to Glenn and to your fiance as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Anytime. Thanks. Take care.